once you get it in you can't get enough of it. So you want to keep going and keep going. And then, that's what you're seeking. Now at this point, the opiates are within their system to the point where they will lose it. Like they will go into straight withdrawals if they don't get more of it. Hello everybody, my name is Pej. I'm a drug interventionist. I specialize in helping people with drug addiction, alcoholism, and mental health. Today we're going to talk about how long does it take for somebody to get addicted to heroin. This is a question that some people may wonder, like how does one actually develop a dependency to an opiate like heroin to the point where they would want it all of the time? And the answer, the short answer is that it's almost immediately. See, when opiates get into your system, into your bloodstream, you develop a dependency where you need it. It captivates you, not because of the flavor, not because of the way that one would use it, depending on if they smoke it, ingest it, inject it. But it's once you get it in, you can't get enough of it. So you want to keep going and keep going. And then, that's what you're seeking. Basically, it sedates you to a point where there's, it's kind of a hard way of describing what it makes you feel like. But I've been told, and I've actually tried heroin in the past when I was in active addiction, where you kind of feel like you're getting a warm hug. Like you can't get enough of it. Like it's very euphoric. It's everything you have been looking for in life. If you are a person that suffers, it numbs you. It makes you feel really, really, in a sedated state to the point where you can't get enough of it. And that's why most people that try heroin almost become addicted to it almost immediately. There's not many actually that I've really ever known that have tried it once and said, I don't want that anymore. And the ones that do, that has happened for, usually will never do it again because they see how addictive it really is. So let's talk about why somebody would even get into heroin in the first place. There's so many different reasons that people start doing heroin. There's some people that have legitimate pain as a result of being prescribed opiates. They develop a dependency. They might take their medication as prescribed, but over a period of time, they might start abusing or taking a little bit more because it makes you feel so good. So sometimes when people have a doctor that's prescribing them medication like painkillers, like opiates, once their prescription runs out, or if they overuse it, or if they're abusing it, then they will go and med seek, like they're seeking more medication, and they will actually ask their doctor for a refill. And if they've used up all of their refills and they can't get that anymore, now at this point, the opiates are within their system to the point where they will lose it. Like they will go into straight withdrawals if they don't get more of it, meaning they need to actually go and get detoxified so that they don't have to continue to seek it. But at this point, the addiction has pretty much taken on formation within the person's being to the point where they have to always have it. And so most people don't just become full-blown heroin addicts right away. Sometimes it will start with medication and certain types of opiates that are being prescribed to them, and eventually they will then go on to seek it however they may find it. They might find a person that they call the plug, like a drug dealer, or they seek it from online sources, and that's not hard to do in this day and age. A lot of people will find it in various outlets, and then there's the dark web too, where it can be even delivered to certain people. So, and then there's also heroin users where you've got people that are just smoking it, for example. They have people that, like so-called friends in school, or people that are already experimenting or have already started experimenting with it, that will have them try it. Like they've already tried other drugs sometimes, or they've drank, but like that's just not enough. They have somebody that turns them on to heroin itself, and then they will smoke it, for example. And it's not like they become immediate IV users, but you can only get so high from smoking it. And so on the west coast of the United States, there's this thing that's called black tar heroin. It looks like tar. Usually when people are smoking it, they'll put it on some tin foil, and as they're smoking, like they're lighting it, it will start to melt, and they will use a tube, a straw sometimes, to be able to smoke that. And then on the east coast, there's China white, which it doesn't look anything like black tar heroin. It actually looks like powder, like a lighter shade of beige, whitish type of powder, which is also heroin. And so when people are using this stuff and they're just smoking it, sometimes over a period of time, there are some who, when it's not enough for them, they'll start seeking other ways of doing it. It's not like people will intravenously just shoot heroin into their veins right away. Somebody, they'll usually learn it from somebody that if you do it that way, it again, that becomes an immediate way of being able to feel it go right into your system rather than having to smoke it. And even, with smoking it, you can get high right away. But when you actually shoot it, that becomes the part where somebody will then need it more and more and more. And then they can go into all kinds of realms of sedation, if you will. Sometimes they will not really, they'll overshoot the mark. They won't realize that the amount that they're doing will make them overdose, and that's why people will often overdose from heroin use. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that there's fentanyl and there's carfentanil, which, in the last decade or so, there was a lot of, people that were selling heroin or people that were buying heroin not knowing that. I mean, some of the people that were selling it knew that it was laced or that there was fentanyl that was mixed within the actual heroin to make it more powerful. And people ask, like, why would a drug dealer want to give the person that's purchasing drugs from them something that's so powerful that it could make them overdose? And I think really there's a lot of greed that's involved in that. A lot of the mentality that goes into that is I want to make my stuff more powerful than anybody else's so that the customer keeps coming back to me. And they have no mercy. A lot of them do not care, like if somebody was to die from it, even if they could become prosecuted as a result of selling somebody something that's deadly and lethal. So fentanyl, in the last decade or so, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but it's been on the rise, and to the point where now there's a lot of people that were regular heroin addicts that are just seeking straight fentanyl, which is also being used and sold as just a straight drug. But it was mixed in heroin for a long time. It still is. A lot of people think that the heroin that they're using is just heroin, but often if they are experiencing overdoses or they get higher than they usually would from just plain regular heroin, it might be because the fentanyl will often be laced within the heroin. I've worked in the treatment setting and had people come in as patients, and when we are doing a urinalysis test or just testing them to see what has been in their system, they'll come in saying that they were just a heroin IV user or just a daily smoker, just a heroin smoker, but all of a sudden fentanyl pops up in their system. So definitely, like, that is running rampant. It's out there more than ever. Again, like, there are certain states like Ohio, for example, right, for the longest time they had a major opioid issue, a lot of deaths, a lot of overdoses as a result of straight heroin. But now if you look, the majority of the stuff that's being sold out there in Ohio, for example, is straight fentanyl. So I think that it would be really important, since we are talking about, how do people get addicted to opiates like heroin, for example, we need to talk about kratom. So what is kratom? Kratom is an opioid antagonist. It's basically like tea leaves, and people, when they use it, they will use it because they don't want to do opiates, but it's still going to give you the same type of effects or similar effects to actual opiates. It doesn't show up in a lot of drug tests unless somebody actually is testing for it. Some people might be in a detox, they might be in a rehab, they might be in a sober living setting, but they're not really serious about recovery, so somehow they will obtain kratom, which is not hard to obtain at all. It can be bought in smoke shops and various outlets. It can be found online, and so they'll use that because they don't want to do heavy stuff, and they think that it's not going to take them to actually doing opiates. But the problem with kratom is a lot of times when it's abused and used for the wrong reasons and used to try to relieve the individual for whatever they are using it for, whether it be for emotional issues, whether it be for bodily issues like pain and things like that, usually it leads back into actual opiate addiction, like into using heroin. I've seen it happen more often than none where somebody will stop doing heroin, they will become totally detoxed, they're not on Suboxone, they're not on methadone, they stay sober for a period of time, but they don't do the work that it takes into what it actually means to become sober, and then they start off with kratom. Usually they do it secretively. They won't let anybody know that they're using kratom. However, when they're using it, they'll do it over a period of time, and it just doesn't seem like it's enough. And then they will then progress back into using heroin because they're after the real feel, the real thing that's going to really get them high. If you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. We talk about addiction, we talk about mental health, we talk about alcoholism quite often. And if you need help, please do not hesitate to call me.